The Roman conquest of Italy was the result of a series of conflicts in which the city-state of Rome grew from being the dominant state in Latium to become the ruler of all of Italy. The first major Roman conquest in historical times came with the final defeat of her neighbor Veii in 396 BC. In the second half of the 4th century BC, Rome clashed repeatedly with the Samnites, a powerful tribal coalition. By the end of these wars, Rome had become the most powerful state in Italy. The last threat to Roman hegemony came when Tarentum enlisted the aid of Pyrrhus of Epirus during the Pyrrhic War. By 218 BC, Roman conquest of Italy had been completed. Conquered territories were incorporated into the growing Roman state in a number of ways: land confiscations, establishment of coloniae, granting of full or partial Roman citizenship, and military alliances with nominally independent states. The successful conquest of Italy gave Rome access to a manpower pool unrivaled by any contemporary state and led the way to the eventual Roman domination of the entire Mediterranean world. Chronology. Rather than assigning an increasing number to each year, like the modern Gregorian calendar, the ancient Romans usually used an eponymous dating system where events were dated by the names of Rome's chief magistrates. Roman magistrates were elected for 1 year, as long as the sequence of magistrates and its synchronization with the modern calendar are known. Dates can be converted from one dating system to the other. Thus, the year when Marcus Tullius Cicero and Gaius Antonius Hybrida were consuls becomes 63 BC. During the late 1st century BC, Roman scholars worked out a complete chronology of Roman history, dating the foundation of Rome to 753 BC and the beginning of the Roman Republic to 509 BC. Today known as the Varronian chronology, this chronology was made official by the early Roman Empire and has remained the standard ever since. However, for the years prior to 300 BC, the Varronian chronology is no longer considered correct. According to the respected Greek historian Polybius, the sack of Rome by a Gaulish warband took place in the same year as the Peace of Antalcidas, which was concluded in 387–386 BC. But according to the Varronian chronology, the Gaulish sack happened 3 or 4 years earlier, in 390 BC. The Varronian chronology also claims that for 5 years, 375 to 371, civil unrest and anarchy in Rome prevented any magistrates from being elected, and in 4 years, 333, 324, 309 and 301 BC, a dictator, rather than 2 consuls, was elected to govern Rome for an entire year. Historians now believe both the lengthy anarchy and the dictator years to be unhistorical. Likely Roman scholars who knew that the Gallic sack and the Peace of Antalcidas were supposed to be synchronous discovered that their list of magistrates, due to errors in transmission, fell short. They then invented an extended anarchy and dictator years to pad out their chronologies to the desired length. By adopting both the anarchy and dictator years, the Varronian chronology therefore has corrected for the same problem twice and ended up too long. Despite these acknowledged errors, academic literature continues, by old convention, to number years according to the Varronian chronology. This is therefore also the convention adopted in this article. Early Roman wars. According to traditional accounts, Rome was first ruled by 7 kings: Romulus, Numa Pompilius, Tullus Hostilius, Ancus Marcius, Lucius Tarquinius Priscus, Servius Tullius, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, all of which, except Numa, are recorded as fighting successful wars against Rome's neighbors. The historicity of these accounts is extremely doubtful. However, Rome must at some point in the regal period have extended her territory to include the Alban Hills and down to the coast. These expansions made Rome by far the largest city-state in Latium. Roman territory c. 500 has been estimated to about 822 square kilometers, more than twice as large as the second largest Latin city, Tibur, at 351 square kilometers. The last king of Rome, Tarquinius Superbus, is portrayed by the sources as a powerful, but tyrannical, king. He is said to have taken Pometia by storm and Gabii by ruse, colonized Signia and Circari, and to have organized the Latin states into an alliance under his own leadership. However, Tarquinius was deposed by a conspiracy led by two of his relatives, Lucius Junius Brutus and Lucius Tarquinius Collatinus. These two then founded the Roman Republic with themselves as its first two consuls. Traditionally, the overthrow of the monarchy has been dated to 509 BC. Tarquinius is supposed to have sought refuge with King Lars Porsena of Clusium, who marched against Rome to reinstate the king. After various heroic acts by brave defenders of Rome, Porsena gave up and instead attacked Aricia, but was defeated by an alliance of Latin cities and the Greek colony of Cumae. Modern historians have had difficulties accepting this tale and have instead proposed that Porsena actually captured Rome and deposed Tarquinius and replaced him with two leading aristocrats. With leadership of the city divided, Rome would have been easier for Porsena to control. With the departure of Porsena, war broke out between Rome and the other Latin states, leading to the Battle of Lake Regillus in either 499 or 496. In 493 a treaty, the Foedus Cassianum, was concluded, establishing a mutual military alliance between the Latin cities with Rome as the leading partner. A second people, the Hernici, joined the alliance sometime later. While the precise workings of the Latin League remains uncertain, its overall purpose seems clear. During the 5th century, the Latins were threatened by invasion from the Equi and the Volscia, as part of a larger pattern of Sabellian-speaking peoples migrating out of the Apennines and into the plains. Several peripheral Latin communities appear to have been overrun, and the ancient sources record fighting against either the Equi, the Volscia, or both almost every year during the first half of the 5th century. This annual warfare would have been dominated by raids and counter-raids rather than the pitched battles described by the ancient sources. The beginnings of Roman expansion. During the second half of the 5th century, the Romans and the Latins appear to have stemmed the tide. The sources record the founding of several Roman colonies during this era, while mention of wars against the Equi and Volscia become less frequent. At about the same time, Rome brought her ancient rivalry with the Etruscan city-state of Veii to a decisive end. In 426, Rome captured Fidenae, Verei's foothold on the southern side of the Tiber, and in 396 Veii fell to Roman arms. Supposedly after a 10-year siege, Rome annexed Verei's territory and enrolled her citizens as Roman citizens, significantly increasing Roman territory and manpower. In 390, a Gaulish warband first defeated the Roman army at the Battle of Allia and then sacked Rome. Despite ancient sources' emphasis on the severity of the destruction, this appeared to have been only a temporary setback for Rome. The records for the first half of the 4th century are confused, but Rome appeared to have embarked on a deliberate policy of aggression against the Volscia. Fear of Roman expansionism increasingly brought the Latin cities into alliance with the Volscia, in a complete reversal of the situation during the 5th century. During the same time period, Rome also fought wars against her neighbors in southern Etruria, the city-states of Pera, Tarquinii and Falerii, as well as fending off the occasional Gaulish incursion. The Samnite Wars. The years 343 to 290 were dominated by a series of conflicts between Rome and the Samnites, a powerful coalition of Oscan-speaking peoples. Rome and the Samnites had concluded a treaty of alliance in 354, but overlapping spheres of interest eventually brought them to war. The chief result of the First Samnite War, 343 to 341, was the expansion of Roman influence into Campania with an alliance with the important city-state of Capua. This war was closely followed by the Latin War, 340 to 338, where the Latins and the Volscia made a final bid to shake off Roman dominion. Once again Rome was victorious. Instead, the surviving Latin states were bound to Rome by separate bilateral treaties. The Campanians, who had sided with the Latins, were organized as civitas sine suffragio, citizenship without a vote, which gave them all the rights and duties of a Roman citizen, including that of military service, except the right to vote in the Roman assemblies. This peace settlement was to become a template for how Rome later dealt with other defeated states. Rome spent the next years consolidating her latest conquests. In 328 war broke between Rome and Neapolis, originally a Greek city-state which by this date also had a significant Oscan population. This war ended when a pro-Roman faction among the Neapolitans took control of the city and concluded a treaty on favorable terms with Rome. Neapolis would remain a faithful Roman ally to the end of the Republic. This war is also notable for the first securely attested case of prorogation when one of the consuls of 327 had his command extended into the next year. Roman alliance with Neapolis and colonization of Fregellae appear to have provoked the Samnites enough to cause the outbreak of the Second Samnite War in 326. In 321 Rome suffered a severe defeat when a Roman army had to surrender at the Caudine Forks and forced to accept a truce with the Samnites. According to traditional accounts, the Roman people at once repudiated the truce and in the next 2 years completely reversed the Caudine disaster, by a series of impressive victories, followed by a 2-year truce 318 to 317. Modern historians have put little credence in this, instead believing Roman victories of 320 and 319 were later inventions and that Rome and the Samnites were at peace from 320 to 317. Hostilities broke out again in 316. After another reversal at the Battle of Lauchuli, the Romans gradually gained the upper hand. After the Roman capture of Bovianum, one of the Samnites' principal towns, the Samnites were forced to sue for peace in 304. Towards the end Second Samnite War, Roman military superiority was great enough that Rome could afford to at the same time launch campaigns into Etruria and Umbria in 311 to 309. In 304 Rome also won crushing victories against the Hernici and Equian in the following years, concluding treaties with the tribes of the Paeline, Marrucini, Frentani and Vestani, and extended her reach to the Adriatic. The Third Samnite War broke out in 298, apparently after the Samnites had attempted to ally with the Lucanians. When this failed, the Samnite commander Gellius Egnatius led his army north to form a coalition with the Etruscans, Umbrians and Gauls. 295 turned out to be the turning point of the war. The Romans managed to detach the Etruscan and Umbrian contingents by invading their homelands and then defeated the combined Samnite-Gaulish army at the Battle of Sentinum. After suffering from a series of defeats and invasions, the Samnites were in 290 forced to accept an alliance on terms imposed by Rome. Italy conquered. The loss of Livy's books c. 15 means that much less information is available for the years 292 to 264 than the preceding decades. It is however clear that Roman expansion continued at increasing pace, leading to the Roman Republic growing from being the dominant state of central Italy to becoming the hegemon of the entire peninsula. In 290 the Roman consul Manius Curius Dentatus conquered the Sabines, who were annexed into the Roman state as citizens without a vote. During 284 to 280 the Romans fought a war against the Etruscans and Gauls in northern Italy. After first being defeated at the Battle of Arretium, Rome won a decisive victory against the Gauls at the Battle of Lake Vadimo, leading to the Roman annexation of the Ager Gallicus. Simultaneous with these wars, Rome's influence in the south was growing. In 285 or 284, the Greek city of Thurii appealed to Rome for aid against the Lucanians and Bruttians. In 284, after defeating the Lucanians and Bruttians in battle, Rome installed a garrison in Thurii, supported by a small Roman fleet. This provoked the city of Tarentum, who had long considered herself the dominant Greek city in Magna Graecia. The Tarentines sunk the Roman fleet and captured Thurii, but having drawn the wrath of Rome, realized they needed allies to have any hopes of standing against Rome. The choice fell on Pyrrhus, king of Epirus and a famous general. Pyrrhus crossed the sea to Italy with his army in 280 and that same year defeated the Romans at the Battle of Heraclea and again the next year at the Battle of Osculum. These victories, however, proved to be strategically indecisive when they failed to convince Rome to accept peace on Pyrrhus' terms. With no end in sight, Pyrrhus in 278 departed for Sicily to aid the Greek cities there against Carthage. He returned to Italy in 275, but this time was defeated by the Romans at the Battle of Beneventum. Pyrrhus then left Italy for Greece, and after his death in 272, the Epirote garrison at Tarentum surrendered the city to the Romans, bringing the Pyrrhic War to an end. While details on these campaigns are scarce, there must also in these years have been extensive fighting between Rome and the Samnites, Lucanians and Bruttians. Roman victories against various combinations of these three peoples are recorded for every single year from 282 to 272. In the years following the Pyrrhic War, Rome completed the conquest of Italy by subduing the Umbrians and Picentes in the north and the Salentini and Messapi in the southeast. In 264, the consul Marcus Fulvius Flaccus put down a social uprising in the Etruscan city of Volsini and reinstalled the old ruling families in power. That same year, his colleague Appius Claudius Caudex led a Roman army across to Sicily, starting the First Punic War and a new phase in the history of the Roman Republic.